council meeting for Tuesday, March 21st. It's currently 7 o'clock. We're missing a couple of councillors. Weber had a medical procedure today, so he's unable to join us, and Councillor Tolbert is away on business. Before I get the meeting started, the Village of Anmore would like to open our meeting by recognizing the many Indigenous peoples of our area, including the following First Nations with communities that are located in the region that we now know as Metro Vancouver: Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam. Further, we would like to honor the important place in history occupied by the many territorial keepers of these lands and waters around us since time immemorial. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Approval of the agenda, the recommendation would read.
That the agenda be approved as circulated.
Someone to move that? Moved. Seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Public input. Public is permitted to provide comments to council on the items shown on the meeting agenda. The 2-minute time limit applies to speakers. Okay, we'll move on. We have a delegation from Countryside. Delegation to review water meeting. Ms. Elroy, if you could give us an overview, please.
Thank you. When the village completed a review of water services, we learned that there were issues with how the water billing was being managed for the homes in Countryside Village strata, which was also resulting in inequitable billing, as some homes were paying more than their fair share of the water use. The issue with the billing is due to inaccessible water meters that are either inside homes or under structures so that individual water usage at these homes cannot be recorded. It doesn't allow the village to read all of the meters. These issues likely stemmed from, or did stem from legacy infrastructure components that were carried over when the strata was converted from a former trailer park. And also the current practice of reading individual water meters is not a standard method for stratas. So this also is the village's intention to move over to how this water meters should be read through strata. So starting in November of 2020, the village notified Countryside in writing to advise them about these inconsistencies and offer help with the transition. Now we are in March of 2023, almost over 2 years later, and we did provide an additional notice to individual residents in case the strata had not already communicated with them that we will be moving to just reading the main meter at the property line for the spring utility bill, and then the strata will allocate the water usage as they see fit.
Perfect. Please come forward as a delegation. If you could just, when you come to the mic, clearly, first of all, make sure that it's turned on. Name and address. Your name and address, please.
Ted Littlewood. Address is 293295 Sunnyside Road in Anmore. Okay, and we're here about the issues with the water meter, and I'm going to ask her to speak for me. I'm sorry, going blank here. So.
My name is Stephanie Gabriel. I'm an owner at number 583295 Sunnyside Road. Along with Ted, I'm also one of the Strata Council members for Countryside Village. So we've just presented to the councillors here today some notes, which is just kind of a summary of what we'd like to say here on behalf of our strata. Just in summary, we have a few points to make. One is that we object to the proposed changes to the method for reading the meters, that is to say the withdrawal of the water metering service, namely because of the negative impacts that we feel it will have on our strata, regardless of which of the two proposed alternatives suggested by the village were to be adopted by our strata council. We have a couple of proposed alternatives that we hope will address some of the village's concerns as we understand them so that the subject service can continue uninterrupted. And we have a few submissions that we'd like to make regarding why the subject service should not be discontinued. In our respectful submission, the proposed change is, for one thing, unilateral and does not have the consent or agreement of strata council. Our opinion that we've gotten from our lawyer is that it is also in breach of the community charter because it constitutes a withdrawal of service and it was not made by way of a bylaw, which is, by our understanding, the only lawful way to make such a change. And moreover, that it is unfair because it is being unequally applied to other stratas in the village of Anmore. So we'd like to touch upon these points, and then if the council has any questions for us at the end, we'd be happy to answer them. So the first one is some of the negative impacts that we foresee on the strata of the proposed change. So two alternative solutions had originally been proposed by the Village of Anmore in terms of converting from our current billing system. One was to have a single meter at the road, which was read by the village, and then we divide within the complex, as Ms. Elric had said earlier in her remarks. And the second one was to transfer responsibility for the reading of the individual meters at the property lines of the bare strata lots to our strata council, and continue doing individual readings that way. So we would like the village council to consider the negative impact of the proposed changes on our strata, regardless of the option that is chosen. We think both of these options actually have different negative consequences for our strata. We have, as far as a single meter reading from the meter currently installed near the property line of our strata complex, our concern is that reading that meter exclusively will result in higher water consumption and costs for our strata due to two factors. One is the expected increase in personal water consumption. Excessive water users will know that the others will bear the burden of their water misuse and will continue and likely even increase their water overconsumption. And our understanding is that this is actually part of the reason that many municipalities are moving towards individual user-based water meter readings, is because, you know, from an environmental perspective, it's actually better to have people be responsible for their own usage. Secondly, the decrease, or the anticipated decrease in the efforts by water conservers to reduce their consumption, because they feel like their efforts are going to be canceled out by those of other people in the complex who are maybe using more water than they are. And then secondly is, you know, some conflict amongst our residents due to the inevitable disagreements about what is the most fair way to bill water. Some people will say split evenly amongst the 92 units, some people will say everybody pays their share. But that, of course, will be a burden to the strata as well. We also feel that this outcome, this issue about decrease in water conservation, is at odds with the village's emphatically stated commitment to sustainable practices in environmental conservation, and ought to be perceived as a pitfall not only for the residents of our strata, but for all the residents of Anmore and also for council. If we are to take the other approach, which is delegation of the individual meter reading to our own strata caretaker, that's going to result in increased costs in time, training, and equipment to the strata respecting the reading of the meters, and also increased accounting costs to the strata associated with invoicing 92 individual properties, collecting fees, sending reminders for overdue accounts, and arranging for penalties for late payments, among other things, all of which we feel is a disproportionately large burden for a small strata as compared to a municipality that's already set up with the infrastructure to support that kind of billing system. In our opinion, the administrative costs described above will only increase over time. Unpaid accounts can be detrimental to a strata with older infrastructure whose priorities are saving for essential infrastructure maintenance, repairs, and routine end-of-life replacement costs, all of which are on our minds right now. In addition, as far as we understand the change, the strata would have to continue paying without discounting to the village's tax base, which gives rise to a powerful argument of unfairness. To strengthen this latter point of unfairness, we would like to add that our strata, that is, already faces an unfair burden of billing regarding metering that does not seem to exist in parity with other stratas with no street meter that is one at the property line of the strata. It has recently come to our attention that such stratas do not pay for leakage upstream of the individual units, even if that leakage falls on strata property or infrastructure. For example, Anmore Green Estates, the strata most similar to ours in the village, does not even have a roadside meter at its entrance. So the only reasonable inference is that the village would bear any water leakage and the cost of the same from the common property infrastructure. Conversely, our strata has had to pay for all water that runs through our roadside meter for the past 14 years, including leakage, to the tune of what we estimate is hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's money that, of course, could have gone to building an investment to replace our infrastructure, which needs replacement. In 2020, we had a leak upstream of the dwelling water meter and appeared before council with a request to assist us to pay the resulting overage costs, and the village refused to assist us. Nevertheless, the village has used language in their correspondence with us indicating a need for changing water billing practices across the village, strongly implying that the changes are village-wide, yet as far as we know, the village is only targeting our strata at this time. Next, I'd like to talk about some of the proposed alternatives to the changes that
I'm just going to ask you, how much longer is your presentation going to be?
I would say a couple of minutes.
Okay, perfect.
A couple of proposed changes to the ones that have been proposed by the village. Our preference is that the village continues to provide the subject service using the meters that it sold to the individual owners in our complex that were sold to us by the village. In exchange for the continued service, we are prepared as a strata to either continue paying the bill from the village for the few, that is 3 right now from what I understand, the vestigial unreadable meters, which we have been paying for all along, so I don't really see how it's a concern to the village in any case. Or alternatively, if the village is unhappy with that solution, we're prepared as a strata to mandate replacement or relocation of the unreadable meters on the 3 remaining affected properties so that the village staff may safely and efficiently read all of the individual meters. In addition, the strata is happy to address any material safety concerns the village may have regarding continuing to provide the subject service. At this time, the village has not particularized the health and safety concerns that they referenced in their communications with us. Okay, I'm just going to zoom forward here. I have a few remarks that I think I can skip fast. As far as the timeline on which this is unfolded, we maintain that this issue was raised as far back as 2020, and we have engaged in an ongoing discussion in good faith, hoping to reach a solution. And so this recent move to kind of declare that the change is happening was a surprise to us. It wasn't something that we regarded as, we don't feel that notice was given 2 or 3 years ago and we just resisted the change. We feel that there was a conversation about the best way forward and that we hadn't reached an agreement. And now this proposed change appears to be, at the point of being forced upon us. We were never invited to make submissions, and we were not asked to provide consent regarding the withdrawal of the service before the village made their decision, which we feel breaches the strata's right to reasonable notice and a right to be heard. As I said, legal opinion is that this change is in breach of the community charter, which permits the withdrawal of a service by a municipality only, A, with reasonable notice, and B, when the recipient of the service has committed one of the prescribed transgressions, including failure to pay taxes.
I'm going to have to cut you off. When we start getting into a legal argument, when we go down that path, we will not be engaged.
I'm happy to skip past that, that's fine. I know that our lawyers are also in communication with you guys as well. So anyways, as far as the community charter goes, I'd simply like to say that, our understanding is that the village should not be delegating this subject service to the strata unless there is a bylaw change which would trigger our right to be heard, and that hasn't taken place. We also feel, once again, in summary, that the village is fully equipped to continue to provide this service. We are happy to make any changes that are necessary in order to make the village staff feel comfortable continuing to take these meter readings. It's more cost effective for the village to do this and would represent an enormous financial burden to a small strata trying to save for necessary infrastructure replacements. And lastly, in comparison to some other stratas where the property sizes are very similar, there may be 5 or 6 houses of very similar square footage. We have houses ranging in size from a 700 square foot trailer to a 4,000 plus square foot house. So dividing up the meter readings equally amongst the 92 units is really not a practical or feasible solution for us at this time, because there's bound to be arguments of unfairness in both directions. Thank you for your time and consideration. We're open to any questions you have for us on the topic.
Couple of things I just want to say. It would have been great having this if we could have got it previous to the weekend to be able to read it. I haven't had a chance to. I'm sorry. I will read it, and that's so. I don't think. And again, this is an operational issue, so I'm going to pass it back over to our staff because we don't get involved in the operations. We get into policy, so I'm just going to pass it back over to Ms. Elrod. But I will read this, and I will make sure that the other 2 copies are passed on to the other 2 councillors on their return.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, as mentioned before, I would like to reiterate that the correct way to manage water billing by reading the main meter is by reading the main meter and using it to build a strata. And then it is the strata's responsibility to determine how to allocate these costs amongst its property owners, much like it allocates strata fees or other costs of strata. The current method of reading the individual water meters, again, is not standard method. It is also not safe or appropriate for village staff to be trying to reach inaccessible meters, which are in some cases under structures and inside structures. In response to the concerns about other stratas in Anmore, the plan is to transition Canterwood and Anmore Green Estates over to the same approach. There are some infrastructure work that needs to be done in order to allow for this shift. Canterwood doesn't yet have a main meter in place for the water usage for the entire strata, and Anmore Green Estates requires some upgrades that will be completed before they were set up. Fortunately, in both of the other stratas, all of the meters on private property are accessible and can be easily read for staff. So the continued individual billing on an interim basis is fair for those strata owners where it is not currently in Countryside. And lastly, I'll just comment quickly on your comments regarding the community charter that the village has already responded to advise Countryside that this is not about any change in delivering water to your properties. There's no intention of discontinuing service. And the only change is that we will no longer be reading the individual meters within the strata.
Good. Okay, thank you again.
Am I able to make one quick response at that one?
No, Ani, no. Sorry.
One question?
Yes.
You mentioned that other municipalities are moving away from strata's. Oh, sorry. You mentioned that your other municipalities are moving away from charging the strata singly and charging all the interior. Do you have any examples?
Sorry, just to clarify, what I meant is that municipalities are moving towards
Individual billing.
individual meetings. So for
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
on a freehold property, rather than, like Coquitlam, as I understand it, used to just have, like, it was kind of rolled in with property taxes.
Yeah.
And now they've moved to a system where they actually have meters at individual properties, and
okay.
the argument
So it was
that
not a specific strata
not
comment?
specific to strata, no.
Thank you.
And I can allude to a little bit of that. Actually, Coquitlam is one of the few municipalities that is fighting this in somewhat in regards to metering water. And from a Metro Vancouver perspective, water now is an expensive commodity, very expensive commodity to treat, regulate, and transport. And so we're finding now, so all new houses, like in Anmore, we have billing, and so it's a user pay. And that's sort of the transition that's happening throughout the Lower Mainland in regards to Richmond, Surrey, Langley Township. So that is the where it's going, because initially water wasn't that expensive, but it's becoming a very, very expensive commodity now, and that's why we're having this, the individual metering for pay per use, basically, is what it is, so. Good. Anything else? Good. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Can I comment on that, I'm a resident?
You can, at the end of the meeting, there'll be a public question period, so you're more than welcome to. I'll point you out at that time.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting held on March 7th, 2023. Recommendation would be?
That the minutes of the regular council meeting held on March 7th, 2023 be adopted as circulated.
Someone to move that? Moved? Seconded? Any comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Is there any business arising from those minutes? Okay, we'll move on. The consent agenda. We have two things on the consent agenda. Would anybody like to pull? Councillor Pryor.
Yes, thank you. I would like to pull item 7A.
7A, okay.
please.
So the only remaining item is 7B, the request for funds for the South Summit Volunteer Fire Department Volunteer Appreciation Dinner. Could I get someone to read out the recommendation?
The council contribute on behalf of the Village of Anmore to the South Summit Volunteer Fire Department Volunteer Appreciation Dinner, the amount of $400.
Someone to move that? Moved. Seconded. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. This used to be encompassed. We used to have a volunteer appreciation night, which I think some members of the audience used to come to, but now they want to do their own thing with the anniversary and that, and they've made a similar request to Belcarra. Okay, items pulled from the consent agenda. So we have the Lower Mainland Lower Government Association Annual Conference and AGM. Let's get the recommendation on the floor first, if we could, Ms. Eller.
The council authorized Councillor Polly Cryer to attend the 2023 Lower Mainland Local Government Association Annual Conference and AGM May 3rd to 5th, 2023 at Harrison Hot Springs, BC at a registration cost of $650.
Could I get someone to move that? Move. I will second it. And I'll open it up to Councillor Cryer. Do you want to? Oh,
No, I
yeah.
have it. Thanks, sorry about that. Thank you. I just wanted to speak briefly to this. The LMLGA is very beneficial to anyone, I think that sits on council, but for myself, I just wanted to speak a bit about how important it is for me because of the tables that I sit at, the Child Care Task Force, the Mental Health Task Force, Healthier Community Partnership tables, and I'm really the only one at the table that sits at some of these Tri-Cities based tables. And when I'm at these conferences, there are so many extra meetings, early morning meetings, where the groups get together so we can collectively discuss things that we don't normally have an opportunity to discuss in the brief meetings, which now oftentimes are virtual. So it is, I know I just went to a conference and I'm asking again to be authorized to go to another, but it is because of the importance for what I do and how I serve the village. And I also wanted to clarify that the registration cost is $650, but there is also accommodations that would be included in that. I don't know how much that is, but I would respectfully ask to have that included as well, because the meetings start at 7 a.m.
Okay. So do we amend the motion to add accommodations?
Typically, when conferences are out of town, the village does
Okay.
include
Okay.
accommodations.
So keep it as it is. Okay, it's been moved to second. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Yeah. Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you and good luck. And I think the only clarity is your first conference that you took this year was actually on training. It wasn't per se on an educational thing like this. So, yeah. Good. Okay, move on to legislative reports. Anmore Green Estates Local Area Service Loan Parcel Tax Establishment Bylaw. Ms. Orr.
Thank you. So this was before council at the last meeting for first 3 readings. So the recommendation this evening is that council adopt Anmore Green Estates Local Area Service Loan Parcel Tax Establishment Bylaw 684/2023.
Someone to move that? Moved. Seconded. Any discussion? See none? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Move on to 9B, the 2023 Anmore Water Rates and Regulations Bylaw Amendment. Report dated March 17, 2023 from Ms. Martin, Manager of Financial Services. Ms. Martin.
Good evening to Mayor and Council. I'm here to present the Anmore Water Rates and Regulations Bylaw Amendment. The Anmore Water Rates and Regulations Bylaw was established to fix the rates and terms under which water may be supplied. In previous fiscal years, revenues were not attained. An increase in water in 2022 to $3.30 was adopted. 2022 ended in a small surplus. With inflationary rates added to the 2023 budget, the 2022 metered rate is still expected to cover those costs, as it's a ratio. The metered rate will remain the same, $3.30 metered square for 2023 budget.
I think it's important that people realize that we charge $3.30 a cubic meter, $3.30 cubic meter. I think the Metro Vancouver wholesale rate, which other municipalities are getting, is about 80 cents a meter, cubic meter. So we have to pay a significant upcharge through Port Moody because it comes through their pipes and gets pumped into our village. I am working on trying to get that changed. It's a slow process. So anyway, because remember the water district and all other water districts except Bocara and Anmore are getting their water at the wholesale rate. Okay, so do you have a motion, Ms. Martin?
That council give first, second, and third reading to Anmore Water Rates and Regulations Amendment Bylaw number 675/2023.
Someone to move that? Moved. Seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Now move on to 9C, the 2023 Anmore Solid Waste Management Bylaw Amendment. The report dated March 17, 2023 from Ms. Martin, Manager of Financial Services, is attached.
The 2023 Anmore Solid Waste Management Bylaw Amendment. The collection service contract for Anmore has increased due to increases in expenses, fuel prices, and other inflationary costs. The collection service contract expense is increased to reflect actual costs from 2023 plus inflation of 6%. Reminding everybody that the CPI currently is 5.9 and at the beginning of the year it was 6.4. So we've just rounded it to 6%. That will give us a $9 annual increase to the solid waste bylaw. And we've kept the transfer to reserves at 50% instead of 100%. To stabilize the increase in the inflationary cost.
Good. So do you have a resolution?
A recommendation that council grant first, second, and third readings to Anmore Solid Waste Management Bylaw Amendment number 676/2023.
Can I get someone to move that? Moved. Seconded. Any discussion? Councillor Richardson.
I completely understand it, and it makes complete sense, but I've heard a number of people complain about the services lately, And I just saying it's hard to pay more for something that you're not really happy with, even though I understand it. So that's my comment. We have to do something here, I think.
The challenge is finding a provider that's going to service us
I
as well.
understand. I understand.
So, anyway, point noted, and I've heard similar things as well. So, see no further comments. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, we'll now move on to 12A, the hub borrowing next steps. At the March 9th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting, the following recommendation was made. That the Finance Committee recommended Council to direct staff to draw partial funds for the hub loan by temporary borrowing bylaw, and that the Finance Committee recommended Council to direct staff to draw full funds from the hub loan by long-term borrowing. Ms. Elroy.
Thank you. So, as noted, this was presented at the Finance Committee meeting, and Ms. Martin is happy to give an overview again or ask any questions of Council. But the recommendation brought forward from the Finance Committee for Council tonight would be that Council direct staff to draw partial funds from the hub loan by temporary borrowing bylaw, and that Council direct staff to draw full funds from the loan by long-term borrowing.
Could I get someone to move that? Move, seconded. This was brought forth from many residents when we were going through the design of the hub in regards to ensuring that future residents paid their portion of the hub. We have the financing to cover it. So really, in essence, we had a debate during our Finance Committee meeting was, do we borrow this internally or do we borrow it at the open market? We can borrow it through MFA at rates much lower than any bank would offer, and that's what the recommendation was. It would leave us a little tight if we did borrow it internally for a longer period of time with a little bit of uncertainty. So we're going to be borrowing it through MFA, which again is a municipal finance authority, and the rates I think right now are currently.
They're currently about 4.5%, but that's a little bit high. It's estimated it might come down.
Yeah, it'll be coming down. So. That's what the request is on this. This has nothing to do with the $2.5 million grant that we're able to get from the provincial government towards the construction of the hub. Yes.
Comment?
Councillor Richardson.
In reading this sort of from a higher elevation, it's a bit confusing. So if you could just explain for the benefit of the people here, we're actually borrowing short-term with the intent to borrow a larger sum at the end of that. It's a bit worded strange.
We looked at both ways to borrow, so this is both through MFA. We're just doing this in terms of cash flows. There is only the opportunity to take a long-term borrowing in October, but the hub is going to complete hopefully before then. So we will need cash flow before that long-term loan can be established. So if we have a short-term temporary borrowing bylaw, we can get money from the MFA up to that point and then take what we've borrowed and roll it into a long term.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, has it been moved and seconded? Any further comments, questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, move on to the mayor's report. Kind of a short mayor's report. March 13th, all of council and Mr. Boyd and some staff joined us for our strategic planning session, which was hosted at Mr. Boyd's offices, which was really, really nice. A very thorough discussion, talking about a lot of, 10,000 foot level issues that Anmore is facing and accomplishments that Anmore's made. On the 15th, I was joined with some of my fellow mayors from the Mayor's Council, and we joined Premier Eby and Minister Fleming for an announcement for the $479 million in funding, transit funding to keep the lights on at TransLink. I think it's important to know that that is a very significant, huge number. However, it only is going to carry us for another year to 2 years. And the funding issue that TransLink is facing is substantial. And there's two challenges that they have. Number one is that people are not buying monthly passes anymore. They've really limited that, and I think it's because we believe that it's due to the fact that some people don't necessarily need to buy a monthly pass because they're working from home 1 or 2 days a week. So the West Coast Express is still only at about 35 to 40% capacity of what it was pre-COVID. SkyTrain is about 80%. but it's a big challenge. So fare revenue is off, and that's, and the other issue, which I think it's pretty easy to tell, is the gas tax. That's charged on gasoline, and gasoline consumption is down because people aren't going to work, and also the advent of the electric car. People are doing electric cars. So as the Mayor's Council comes, and as TransLink starts pushing, they are pushing hard to put a bigger chunk out of our property taxes. And for us in Anmore, which I've been fighting very vigorously against, is this notion of a luxury tax on houses over $3 million. And so I'm in contact with all the other municipalities that are saying, in similar situations, i.e. West Vancouver, Belcarra, Latins Bay, making sure that they don't come after us, because it's, as I keep saying, it's inherently unfair for the amount of service that we get. So this TransLink funding issue is not going away. This is a small step in what really needs to happen. And I know that I've been talking quite aggressively in the fact that more money needs to be taken out of TransLink in regards to the when new lines go in, the hubs, the stations that are there, and the lift that some of the local municipalities get on provincial and federal dollars that are being put into this line. And it doesn't take, you don't have to drive far to see what's happening around some of these stations. If you go by Lougheed Mall, there will be 30 towers there at one point, which will bring about close to $1 billion of CACs, community amenity contributions, to that individual municipality. You throw on that Brentwood Mall, you throw on that Coquitlam Center. There's significant money that I feel, maybe I'm being feeling a little left out, that we don't have one, nor would we, but that money should be shared in redevelopment of the region and redevelopment in SkyTrain. Those money should go back as the provincial and federal dollars. So that's with TransLink. This upcoming week, I will be in Victoria. There's a CAO board chair of Metro Vancouver Conference, and then I've also been appointed to the MFA board, so making sure that there'll be no issues with our funding. I'll be over there meeting with the Premier and other ministers. I think I have a meeting with Minister Heyman set up, so hopefully I'll get some notes from staff that everything has been done with the Anmore Green Estate, so I can make sure that that's good. And then come back, and then on Friday we have a board meeting, and then we are up to Harrison for Friday night for the board strategic planning session. So that was my report. Councillor Cryer.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. All right, I have quite a lengthy councillor's report. I apologize for missing our last meeting. As most of you know, I am the community person for the Tri-Cities for the Homelessness and Housing Task Group, and I was away at our last meeting doing the homeless count, which is a 24-hour point in time count, which took place on Tuesday and Wednesday. So it's always a very inspiring day, 24-hour period with a lot of work leading up to it. And essentially I dispatched 60 volunteers and outreach workers into the Tri-Cities over that 24-hour period of time, and they physically do a count via a survey, an anonymous count of all of our unhoused people in the Tri-Cities. My favorite part of the day, I would like to do a thank you to the Tri-Cities Chamber of Commerce, who allowed me to use their boardroom for my command central, which was the perfect opportunity for all of my volunteers to gather before and after their shifts. And there's a lot of conversation and decompressing that needs to go on after you have these interactions with our unhoused neighbors. So it really was a good day, a long but very, very good day. So I apologize for not being here. So I have 4 weeks worth of updates, and it's been a very busy time. It's been lovely to be out of pandemic mode and doing meetings and phone calls and emails with some of the residents and people involved in the community. So I've had a lot of that going on, and I really enjoy it, and it's been good to be back doing what I started my last term. I had hoped to start. So just going through the list of everything going on, the mental health task force, we have actually taken a pause on that. Our main goal when we started it was to secure a foundry for the Tri-Cities, and we have accomplished that. So we are on a pause right now and looking forward to gathering again. I wish I had more information on the foundry, but it's right in that in-between time where we're moving into executing the program and finding a location. So not much to report there, but I will keep you updated. I completed my responsible conduct for elected officials training. I did that yesterday. Anybody else at this table? It's only about an hour. But that was fascinating. So I got that off the to-do list. I also attended Share Imagine. I think most of you know that Share Family and Community Services is very close to my heart. They have their yearly fundraising gala, which is their only gala or event that they do to raise funds. And I was thrilled to see that they came up with over $200,000 this year. Amazing. And just a few things. I think we all think of the food bank when you think of Share, but they also do a lot of other counseling and support for refugees and newcomers, youth battling addiction, youth with developmental delays and disabilities, as well as speech, physical, and occupational therapy. So they are a big part of our community and the health of our community. So it was an honor to be there representing the village of Anmore. We had our council photos, thanks to Ms. Hovey for taking care of those. We got those taken care of. Mayor McEwen mentioned our budget finance committee meeting. We had our strat plan meeting. Thank you to Mr. Boyd for hosting and serving us Greek food that really resembled barbecue. So, but it was very good. And Easter egg hunt is coming up, and that is on Saturday, April 8th, and coloring contest, so make sure you do that.
Where is the Easter egg?
I think it's near where we're sitting.
Yeah.
It's like right here.
I think it's on the school grounds.
It's on the school grounds somewhere, I'm not exactly sure where. We also have been invited to attend Heritage Woods Secondary School's Capstone Day. And Councilor Richardson, I don't know if you are familiar with it, but I think you would have also received the invitation, and it's an opportunity to sit down with the graduating class. They do projects, and they present them to key leaders in the community. So I think all mayor and council are invited, as well as business folks, and it's a day-long opportunity with lunch. I'm only doing a half day of morning meetings, but it's really amazing to see what these kids are doing at that age. And lastly, I was very happy to see the Beneath the Surface progress report. At our 2 meetings ago, there were some questions when we did our community grants. There were some questions about updates on what our funding goes to, and for those of you that haven't had a chance to look at it, it is included in the agenda package, and it's probably listed online as well for anyone that's listening. Make sure to read it. She's doing an amazing job. Yeah, it just was very good. It was a very good reminder of where our funds go and what she's doing to help the environment and teaching kids in our community about nature. That is all.
Good.
Told you it was long.
Wholesome report.
Yes.
Councilor Richardson.
Okay, so thanks to Nancy Maloney at the last council meeting, I actually looked into a little bit about her question, the Housing Supply Act and Anmore seemingly being a target. It is a bit strange. They've just sort of begun with not many details. And also David Eby in the past has suggested that Anmore will not be allowed to have 1 acre lots anymore because we're 8 kilometers to SkyTrain. So I looked into Port Moody's sort of high density development, and it's 800 meters, not 8 kilometers. So there's a bit of interest there, or difference there. So I'd like to make a motion, and my motion would be that Anmore Council send a letter to Premier Eby and Housing Minister Callan requesting clarification and specifics Anmore being targeted under the Housing Supply Act in their recent statements.
I think if we could change the word from targeted to mentioned.
Fair enough.
Okay, mentioned in recent, and those statements were from a couple months
There was
ago.
one from the CPAC news article, and there was one that you actually mentioned in a phone call with David Eby.
I'm going to say, I'll second it. Richard, any other? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carrie, Nancy? Anything else?
Thank you, Nancy.
Nothing else? Okay. Move on to the Chief Administrative Officer's report.
Thank you. So we will be sending notification out as well, but just to give everybody a heads up that the water main flushing will be starting on March 27th, and that will go on for approximately 3 weeks. So residents may notice some pressure fluctuations or discoloration, and if so, you could just run your water, your bathtub or your outside water faucet for about 15 to 20 minutes, and that should clear up. Speaking of solid waste earlier this evening, again, we will be notifying everybody as a reminder, but there has been an additional collection day added in March. There's 5 Fridays, and normally we only have 4 collections each month. So the collection will also be on March 31st, and that will be all 3 streams on that date. So we'll have 5 garbage collections in March. And then lastly, as Councillor Cryer alluded to earlier, we will be having the Easter egg hunt this year here at Anmore Elementary, and it will just be right behind us on the field, and that'll be set up for 11 a.m. on Saturday, April 8th. And also we have the coloring contest that was sent out by mail drop. It's also available on the website and at Village Hall. If anybody needs extra copies, please drop by and pick up a copy. Thank you.
Good, and I just forgot to mention the Village Hub is back in business. We got held up for a couple months with BC Hydro. Work couldn't continue on the building until some of the hydro lines, so we were at their mercy. Those lines have been moved, and they're underground on the extension of Montgomery Lane, which will be coming right out at Sunnyside. So there, you'll notice that there's 2, I guess, what do you call them, lifts there right now, so work will be progressing there fairly quickly, and we're hoping for, is it September now?
Yeah.
Sort of a September completion, so things will be going fairly quickly now with the roof. We're just missing that, I guess it's the southwest corner couldn't get done, so the roof couldn't get on, and that will be, that won't take long to get in, and the place will get, they were doing some work externally, all the servicing I kept being told. So anyway, things should be moving full bore ahead now with the Village Hub. So great news. We have some information items. No information items. General correspondence regarding BC Epilepsy Society, regarding International Poker Day, Beneath the Surface report, which Councillor Cry talked about. Public question period. I'd like it if we could keep the public question period to operational things of the village, if that's possible. So, anybody have any questions regarding the operations of the village?
Are you? There actually still is a lot of COVID around.
Nancy.
Is the mic on, Nancy? There you go.
Okay, we're good?
There you go.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, my question relates to our community committees. And I wondered what is happening, like people's terms expire at the end of this month, and there hasn't been any call for people to apply, and nor have, the chairs are usually our councillors, almost always, and nor have chairs been appointed or reappointed. For example, former councillor Laidler is still listed as the chair of Protective Services, or which I think now is called Public Safety.
Yeah, I'll be sitting down with Ms. Elrick. Again, we've had a bit of a staffing shortage, which I'm sure you're aware of at the Village Hall. We're hopefully going to be having a corporate secretary here filled in here in the next month, 4 to 6 weeks. So, and that's usually one of the roles that they take on with working with the mayor in regards to establishing all that. So we were able to make sure that the finance committee was well positioned to be able to not hold us up with our financial plans and our taxing, as well as the APC. So the other committees will be get going fairly soon as we get a full staff recruitment to get going. So thank you. We'll be able to find, yeah.
Jurgen Dirkton, 1815A East Road. I actually now have 3 questions, but I've eliminated one at your request. So I'll go to the second question, which is now my first question. It's actually through the chair, and it pertains to the ugly sweater Christmas dash. Council proclaimed December 10th, 2022 to be the ugly sweater Christmas day, and it was well attended, and I gather a number of people would like to see it as an annual Anmore event. If this is to be the case, should there not be some sort of financial disclosure statement or a public account of the funds actually raised for charity?
Ms. Sauer?
Thank you. Through the chair, I think you would need to contact the organization regarding that. In terms of the village's support, it's my recollection that the support that the village provided last year was in-kind support in terms of some barriers, some staff time, those types of items. There was no financial support from the village.
Very similar to the Random Acts of Kindness.
Oh, exactly, but I'm not asking what the village contributed, but I'm just saying that I couldn't find a public announcement on Facebook or anywhere, like, here's the check to the charity.
There was no check.
I would suggest that you might want to contact the organization itself, as it's not, affiliated with the village in that way.
Okay. The other question I have is to the chair, again to the mayor. I'm just wondering, is there actually, is the village or some staff at the village actually documenting the stages of the development of the hub? Pictures of the hub, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a good question. I believe there is. We have a committee that is working with the hub. Ms. Eller?
Thank you. Through the chair. So Jacob Brothers, the general contractor, we have been in contact with them asking about pictures and a log, and they do keep quite detailed records of all of their projects, and we'll be sharing that sort of timeline with us as we move through the project so that we are capturing that.
Great.
One of the interesting things was the other night, it was a beautiful evening and we had our council pictures, and it's a tradition of every new council that we go and have our pictures. And so at my suggestion, I said it would be kind of neat to do the council picture in front of the current state of the village hub, so that many years down the road we can look up on the wall and go, remember when it looked like this? So yeah, it's a good thing to make sure that it's all been itemized. There will be a video coming out on it fairly soon too, once the progress gets going as well, that's been done.
Great, thank you.
Linda Weinberg, 2923 Fern Drive. I'm not sure if my question comes under your requirements. I've been watching the development of Mulberry Lane, and it looks like it's not a full-size road. And so my question is, because last meeting, some people came and asked about subdividing their property, which backs onto the lane. So if that happens, then I think all new properties have to have put in sewer facilities, sewer piping.
I can tell you that after last meeting, the following day, Ms. Cherry, who did the presentation, had a discussion afterwards with various people and said that the proposal was not valid.
Okay, but theoretically, if all those people have acres, I think.
No, there's some of them are duplexes actually.
Okay, so, but if the ones that have an acre decide to do the infill, then do they have to put in this sewer line?
I'm not aware of that.
No, this provision within the subdivision development control bylaw is not required to install a sewer line based upon the size of the development. If it was a larger development, the request is that we review the need for the install of sewer. So if it's when it comes to infill, the answer is categorically no, sewer's not required.
And would they also then fall under the extended road width?
There's also provision within the subdivision control bylaw, really in regards to something like Marmurray Lane, that's a dead-end road that serves one house. The requirement within the bylaw is they don't need to provide the full 20-metre right-of-way. It's up to 15, and also the roadway can be more along the lines of a laneway that you would see in other municipalities.
So are we basically, as a general rule, now offering right-of-way to people rather than dedication to people on extended road widths?
No, again, we've kind of gone through this before, that when it comes to a new subdivision, the request is that it's a dedicated road. Dedicated road meaning that it goes into the municipality's land bank, essentially. But in some circumstances where it's an existing road right away in front of the property, such as maybe an infill or a smaller subdivision, that we request a road right of way on top of their property, because the removal of the land actually has some implication on FAR requirements and setback requirements.
Yeah.
So that's why we've requested to have a right of way instead of those positions, and that'll always come through the approving officer to review that point. The whole premise of dedication versus right of way, we always want dedication in most circumstances. However, what we're trying not to do is to affect a resident's ability to subdivide. So that's where we would look to take right of ways instead.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Hi, Greg Moore. Regarding Councillor Richardson's notice of motion tonight, I just wanted to clarify did you know that the statement that the Minister of Housing said was that basically everybody has to do their part in the housing crisis, from Vancouver to Anmore? They didn't actually mention Anmore as part of the Housing Supply Act and the top 8 or 10 communities that are going to be identified for growth. I suspect that would be Vancouver and Burnaby and Coquitlam and everywhere that's got a SkyTrain. So just did you know that what the minister actually said, and he didn't actually mention Anmore as a targeted community or mention community as part of the Supply Act. He just said that basically everybody has to be a part of the housing solution or housing crisis, including a community like Anmore. So there's a question there, did you know that? Well, it's a question period, so I formed it as a question.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was aware, I listened to it clearly, and he specifically mentions conversations with the mayor of Anmore specific to the Housing Supply Act. So
No,
I don't know if you're watching the same thing I watched. I'll go back and check it again.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, sorry about that.
That's okay.
If
My
you-
name is Earl Bateman, and I live in Countryside. I've lived there since 2008. I did just want to say a few words. This whole water meter issue came to my attention on March the 10th when I received a letter from Mr. Donaldson, which it sounded like a heavy-handed letter the way it was written, because it was sort of a facto. It's going to happen, it's done, here you go. Nobody in Countryside is aware, and I speak from several conversations with residents there that this was happening. They got the letter just as I did, and we all went, what? I've learned a few things tonight which I didn't know, but nonetheless, it's come as a complete surprise. In trying to find out what was going on, I went to your office on the following Monday to find out that he was on holiday, so I never got to speak to him. I did speak with Karen, and she mentioned this whole business about Stratus have to go in this direction. And I thought, wait a minute, we've been a Stratus since 2008. That doesn't compute to me, I guess, when I hear that. I'm thinking, well, we should have been that way, I guess, since 2008. But we've been using water meters ever since. I get a bill twice a year with the reading, and I pay it, and I'm sorry. So much of a surprise for the residents there, including yours truly. And I guess I don't appreciate being blindsided. This was certainly a blindside.
Well, and I'm sorry, it's important that, I'm surprised that you didn't know that there was conversations going on back in November of 2020, which is...
I saw the reference in his letter to two, I think there were memos or something that was sent. Never saw them.
Yeah, I think I would be bringing that up with your strata in regards to that.
Oh, I've done that too.
I think that the most, Countryside has changed significantly, as you've seen, since 2008. Initially there was one washroom, one lot type thing in regards to most of the trailers there. Now we have some houses that have 5 washrooms, dual laundry.
I know.
And so that's where the change is made. It was, back in the day, it was much different at that point and that. So I really appreciate you coming and talking, and like I said, I'm gonna be reading through this and that, so I really appreciate
I have
you.
no idea what that lady said on behalf of Countryside. I've never talked at that speed in my life.
Well, thank you for coming out. Yeah.
I would like to say that I was having a hard time keeping up with her too. She was talking so fast that at least I have it in print that I can read. I think maybe they should share that with all of you.
Have you seen this presentation that they put forth, or?
It was like I said, communication zero. The very first indication this was even an issue was.
Is it possible that will this get part of the agenda?
I certainly don't have an issue attaching it to the, sorry, through the mayor, certainly we can attach it to the minutes as the presentation, and that would be publicly available on our website then.
It'll be something that we
And
certainly.
I do believe I believe I have your email address.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Well, I sent you an email looking for those 2 notices, but you never responded, so.
okay, so, I can email this as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you could distribute it, and
Well,
yeah.
we're all flying in the dark right now.
Yeah, okay, good, thank you. See, others, motion to adjourn. Moved. All those in favor? Thank you, everyone, for coming up, thank you. Thank you. I do too. I feel bad for the residents as well.
Hold on. We're rounding up.
So I'm almost there.